Welcome back to my channel. My name is Mel Mitchell-Jackson, and I am an adventure artist based in the San Francisco Bay Area. Today on this little episode, we are going to be doing a bit of a recap of the last month. I did some traveling for the holidays at the end of December, but before that, I did a ton of work building out my shop. So I am going to be participating in a bunch of makers markets / art markets in the Bay Area this coming year. There's a really cool craft and makers market scene here in the Bay, so I'm really excited to take part in those markets and start sharing my artwork with people who want to be reminded of the beauty of the trails of the Bay Area. That is the main goal of the work that I make, is to help remind people that it's beautiful to get outside. It's important to be bathed in nature. And if we can have little fragmented moments that we hang up in our home to remind us, hey, let's hit the trail, that is the goal. I'm going to show you the soft open / practice pop-up that I did at Bees and Blooms farm. Bees and Blooms is an organic lavender farm based in Santa Rosa, California. It's really cool. I love to go up there, and I also teach there. Part of being an adventure artist means going out and going on little adventures and exploring. For those of you who know me in person, you know this, but hi, internet. I have long COVID, and I think that's something that you don't see a lot of people having or talking about, but my symptoms kind of vary and range from tachycardia episodes to burning lungs, and it really put a dent in my physical fitness. So while my work is about these beautiful adventures of going outside, they're also little fragmented documents of my journey to slowly get back to where my body was before I got sick. So if that resonates with you, cool. And also support disabled artists. In this video, I'm going to show you 2 separate hikes that I went on. One right before I went away for the holidays, that is on Mount Diablo. It was one of my goals by the end of last year to try and get to a peak on Mount Diablo. Despite the fact that I hike really slowly, I take a lot of breaks to make sure that I am being compassionate to my body. I made it to the top of the North Peak, which was amazing. So I'll show you a little bit of footage from that. I'm also going to show you a little bit inside of my sketchbook. So while I was home in Chicago, I took a lot of the time that I was there to recharge and to work in my sketchbook. So I brought 2 sketchbooks with me. One I lovingly call my ugly sketchbook, and I did quite a few crayon drawings in there, as well as a couple of messy gouache paintings where I was testing out some of my new materials. And then I also have my watercolor moleskin sketchbook that I'll be showing you, which is my baby. It is where I really feel like I get to take the moments that I capture in my camera roll on my phone and make them a little bit more magical and more saturated the way that I can with a painting in a tiny pocket-sized format. So I'll be showing you that. The other hike that I'm going to be sharing with you is in Marin County. So if you've never been to Point Reyes National Seashore, if you're in the Bay Area, I can't recommend Point Reyes enough. It's a little bit hard to get to, but what I love about those hikes is they've been essential for me in terms of my journey and COVID recovery. The air there is incredibly clean. It's right on the ocean. It is just covered in lichen, and it's so gorgeous. There's all these little wild quail that live there. I love Point Reyes. So I went there as soon as we got back from our trip, and we did a really long hike, and it was amazing to kind of celebrate being back in the Bay and being back surrounded by so much gorgeous nature. Lastly, I'm going to end the video with giving you a tour of some of the supplies that I was able to get over the holiday seasons. Artist gouache is something that I had never used before. I dabbled in gouache when I started to get sick of oil painting and all of the chemicals involved in it when I was in undergrad studying painting. And I only used acrylic gouache, which is really just matte acrylic. And I also used a brand called Winsor Newton's Designer's Gouache. So you'll get to see me building out my palette, creating my travel palette and mixing some of those colors together. And then at the end of the video, I will show you my process for making a color chart. Now, when you get new supplies, it's often good to swatch those supplies and kind of figure out how they're going to work with the materials you already have. But there is nothing quite like making a color chart, because then you're going to see the different colors, how they dilute, and how they play with one another. So I'll give you a little bit of an insight into my color chart process as well. Picking up where we left off, I am trying to figure out where the shelves are going to go on this main display piece, getting them hung up, and actually seeing what they look like on a table, since that's the ideal setup. Once I had that all figured out, I loaded all my shop parts into my car, and then here I am with Susan and Wesley getting the pop-up tent set up next to the farm stand, trying to figure out where it's gonna go, how it's gonna go, and then unloading. So I got 2 6-foot foldable tables from Ace Hardware that were on sale, and then I also got these fun little spandex tablecloths that won't blow away in the wind, thanks to some suggestions from a really awesome art Discord I'm in. And then setting up that accordion fold out, my pegboards, and just slowly getting all of these things set up. So this part for me was super exciting, seeing all of the work that I had put in planning and trying to figure out how this was going to look, actually coming together and looking better than I had anticipated. So it was really exciting. I got to play curator again, and my partner got to be funny and tape some of my old artwork to his face. He's always such a good reminder for me to not take myself too seriously. So then I'm attaching all of the pieces to the accordion fold out with what's called museum putty. So that way, if somebody bumps the table, nothing is going to fall off of those tiny little shelves. And then getting my register table set up. I ended up switching where things were located and where I sat on the second day, and it led to a little bit more of people feeling like they could walk in and discover. So here is the final setup. I am so happy with how it turned out. I've got my bright green little price tags and titles for everything. It ended up being a relatively quiet weekend, but I sold one painting and made some new friends, sold a couple of my new art cards that I'm really excited about. And now I feel like I am ready to do a market with lots of marketing and a big audience. Cheers to application season. Next up, here is the view from when we completed our hike to North Peak. That is where we hiked to. And this is the section of the trail that is lovingly called Diabolical, because it is very rough gravel. But the view was amazing on this December day. My partner both makes the music for the videos and is an incredible photographer, so I wanted to show you a couple of my favorite shots of his from this hike. Onto the mini sketchbook tour. This is my ugly sketchbook and my watercolor sketchbook. I'm going to show you the inside of this. I'll do a full tour of the sketchbook once it's done, and it is near completion, which feels like such a huge achievement for me. But let's get to where we started this holiday. I did a gouache painting from A Night in Pacifica, a quick sketch of a tree in Sheboygan, and then I watched the rehearsal with my dad, so I did some sketches from that, another one of my partner taking photos, and a couple from my 100 Heads selection that I have on Pinterest. This was just a fun experiment in color. Some candles on my dad's table, some more heads, and more heads. I really liked how this one turned out. And then I'm back to my sketches of the bay, another 100 Head, another sketch of a photo I found from my grandma's old home, my partner reading on the couch on New Year's, a sunset in Wisconsin, another one of my 100 Heads, and then it looks like that's it for this sketchbook while I was traveling. When I got back, I dove into this space a little bit more and did some sketches from the trip to the Sierras that I did. another one of the 100 heads, some blobs for me to fill in later, and then a couple sketches I did on Instagram Live using some alcohol-based markers and colored pencils. As you can see, I am so close to being done with this sketchbook that I started in May of 2023, so I can't wait to give you a tour of it once it's fully done. Then on to my moleskin. I'm officially more than halfway done with this sketchbook, and it is so awesome. Here is a sketch of sunset on Mount Diablo, some sketches I made of the moss and Briones, the waterfalls on Diablo, a photo I took up in Mendocino Coast, recreated in gouache, my favorite emerald pool and swimming hole up in Leggett, California, capturing a little bit of the snow near my dad's house in Chicago. And as you can see, halfway done. So excited to see where this goes next. Here are some of my favorite shots from that hike I mentioned in Marin. So it starts out in a really dense redwood forest that feels like Jurassic Park. The forest thins out quite a bit, and it's cool to see the regrowth beginning to happen since this area was super damaged by the Woodward fire back in 2020. Seeing the baby trees and the way that the forest regrows itself after these really traumatic events are a great example of death and rebirth that I always find really inspiring and peaceful, as well as a little bit spooky. As we get closer to the coast, the fire damage becomes even more apparent with these really thinned out dead trees. Once we finally got to the coast trail part of our loop, it wasn't long until we found a place with a beach to take our hiking boots off, walk around in the sand, and have some lunch. I really love seeing areas like this at low tide where you can actually see all of the different erosion and the way that the rocks are reformed by the ocean every day. When I got closer to the rock formations on the edge of this coast, I noticed some really interesting and cool things that I wanted to share here and also tag one of my favorite YouTube geologists, Myron Cook. What is going on here with this sliver in between the rocks? If you know, you should tell me in the comments. All right, we're about halfway through the video, and there's actually something else that I wanted to share with you. So I mentioned briefly that I teach at Bees and Blooms Farm. I teach the Art on the Farm program that I started there, and I want to meet more people who want to learn, and I also want to build better community. I moved to the Bay Area in 2021 and got sick shortly after, and I've kind of been a bit of a recluse for the better part of 2 years while I've been healing from long COVID. And so I want to meet people in ways that are safe and genuine. So I'm going to be hosting some virtual sketchbook nights. So if you want to join my sketchbook club, it's going to be every other Thursday through the month of January and into March. I'm hoping to extend it for longer if we have a good group of people that regularly show up. So if you're like me and you chronically don't finish your sketchbooks, you can join Sketchbook Club and hang out and actually dedicate that time to making and filling your sketchbook up. So the link for those will be down below. I also am doing a free program that are hikes. So I'm doing 2 different hikes around the Bay Area. One of them will be at Sibley Volcanic, and the other one will be in Briones Regional Park. Both of them totally free. I'll just send you the All Trails pin if you sign up. We'll meet up there and we'll go for a hike. I want to meet more creatives, more people that are creative adjacent, that are creatively curious in the Bay Area. And then we'll go on a little hike, and then we'll have a little picnic, and we can hang out and sketch and draw and just be in community with one another outdoors in a way that is COVID safe. So yeah, I look forward to meeting you. And the last thing that I have going on is this thing called Sip and Sketch. So that's happening at Bees and Blooms Farm. And it's a tasting of both wine from Muscardini cellars and my teaching style. So if you are curious to see what the space looks like of Bees and Blooms, if you want to see the farm, if you want to taste some amazing wine, those programs are totally free. You can sign up through the link that I'm putting in the description as well. Lastly, last little bit that I have to tell you is that I am teaching again, and I do have my winter courses up. So if you want to take a look at those, feel free to browse. Most of them are in person in the Bay Area at Bees and Blooms Farm. But if you see a particular course that you're like, Mel, I want to take that, but I live in Nebraska, then all you need to do is send me an email and we can work on figuring out how to make it a private course for you that's virtual, one-on-one, or we can find community to have some more virtual courses. So would love to help make those possible as well. All right, back to the video. Supply unboxing time. I was tracking this package for way too long, but it finally got here and I am beyond excited to open up. It ended up being an obscenely large box for how little stuff I ordered, but I feel like that constantly happens. Let's see here. Looks like all of the gouache that I ordered got put in various boxes. My little travel water container, my favorite brush cleaner. I'm gonna unbox these mystery boxes here in a moment. I also ordered some pastel paper, which is a medium that I haven't ever been super comfortable with, but felt really inspired after meeting a very cool pastel painter in the Chicagoland area. To work with pastels, I know that you can't just use any old paper. You need to use pastel paper that has a specific texture. And I got excited by this pack because it comes with some colors that I can work on top of. That felt pretty fun. I also have 2 pastel sets that I'm dying to use. This one I inherited from my grandmother. It totally is unused and it looks like it's from the 50s, so pretty pumped to use it. The thing about loose pastels I know is that I have to use a respirator, and my goal is to only use them outdoors, so that way I don't have to worry too much about proper ventilation in here. And then this is actually a set that I got for Christmas from my mom from that artist that I mentioned. So Nancie Mertz, she is a pastel painter and her work is freaking amazing. So definitely going to use that inspiration to try a new medium outdoors and see what happens. So normally when I'm bringing water out in the landscape, I'm always using old Trader Joe's salsa jars, and that doesn't really cut it because they're heavy. And so I got this fun little pop-up silicone water cup that I can use out in the landscape. Super excited that it's got a little string so I can just hook it onto my bag and use it anywhere out in nature. And then close it nice and easy. I've seen some dog bowls that do this exact same thing, so this is just the art version of a dog bowl. All right, unboxing time. Let's see what is in this box. I've got one white Holbein titanium white gouache. Before deciding on which colors I was going to order from which brands, I went through the database on Fearless Brush, which is amazing, and it allowed me to really realize which of the colors I wanted to use from each of the various brands. I'm super excited that I was able to find a dioxazine purple and a really deep ultramarine, 2 colors that are pretty essential for me in my acrylic palette. Then I got a phthalo from Holbein. Phthalo is almost never opaque, but Holbein's is almost opaque, which makes me excited. I also got a burnt umber, which is always great for mixing with ultramarine to make the most perfect black that I have in my palette, a gorgeous lemon yellow, a flame red instead of a cadmium. My yellow is also non-cadmium. It is azo yellow or Hansa yellow. And then a phthalo blue for tinting some of my own greens as well. Another person that I've been learning a lot about gouache from is James Gurney here on YouTube. And he taught me that I should be always storing my gouache in a closed, sealed container so that way it doesn't dry out the way my very old gouache from college did. I got a couple of colors as well from Daniel Smith, as a lot of folks here on YouTube raved about the quality. So I have a buff titanium first, and I'm mixing up the Hansa yellow deep that I got from Daniel Smith. I also tried out Holbein gouache by getting a raw sienna a couple of months ago. Adding in my lemon yellow, flame red, opera rose, which I already had, some phthalo green, and then mixing up two different tones of a dark, deep Hansa medium yellow with a green, and then a more chartreusey lime green with the lemon yellow. Adding in my verditer blue, my deep ultramarine, getting my phthalo blue and my dioxazine purple all mixed up in there, and then putting all of my gouache in its very nice gouache jar. Before I begin my color chart, I create a grid paper with 1/2-inch squares all across, and then I'm thinking about the amount that the colors are going to dilute as I am mixing them. So I start with my buff titanium, my lemon yellow, my Hansa yellow, my raw sienna, and then I drag all of those across. And the way that I'm doing these mixes is up at the top I have each of the colors in their pure form, and then I have the mixes and tints with titanium white all along the bottom. And this works kind of like a spreadsheet. So each row and each column gets mixed together with the subsequent rows and columns. So for example, with my lemon yellow up at the very top, you can see it mixed with each individual color as it goes. So last week I had a friend on TikTok ask, why do you lay out your color charts the way that you do? And how do you know how much to mix of each color with the corresponding color in the different column? And here's the quick answer. It depends on the pigment. So each pigment is a little bit unique. Things like phthalos, as well as things like flame red, are going to take up a little bit more space and be more pigment dense than other colors like lemon yellow or titanium white. So you might just want to add a touch or a hair of that color. And so it's really through the experience of mixing those colors over and over again that I start to feel in my hand exactly how much I need to add when I am mixing these colors and laying them out on a color chart. This gets into why it's super important to make these color charts and practice mixing your colors when you get new ones, and especially with your old ones, because you'll get to learn in your hand how each color behaves with the other colors you have, and you'll also create a really great reference when you're ready to start painting. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. I am so glad that you're here. Thank you for watching and hanging out with me through these various parts of my artistic practice. If you have questions about the things that you saw in the video, please leave them for me in the comments. I would love to use comments and the things that y'all are curious about to drive the work that I make here and what I share on other social media platforms. So if that's your jam, please, seriously, just ask me. I mentioned this briefly, but I studied painting and I would love to share the skills that I learned in art school for free on the internet as often as possible. Help me do that by asking good questions in the comments. You can let me know if there was something that you liked. You can like the video. You can subscribe if this is your jam. I would really appreciate it. The thing I'm most excited about is trying to share that sense of joy and as much of my practice and my process with you as humanly possible. So if that sounds like your jam, follow along, and until next time, stay creative.